Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is my New York. Tom Brokaw is here today. He comes bearing gifts of perspective, re-examining in a new book the only time Congress compelled a president to resign or be ousted. The Fall of Richard Nixon, A Reporter Remembers Watergate, Tom's memoir of heady days and nights on the White House beat for NBC News. A lively read, timely, and not without surprises. Tom Brokaw, next. Tom Brokaw, delighted to see you. Welcome.
Great to see you again, Tony.
This book puts you in a turmoil, a cauldron. You're 33 years old. NBC says, go to the White House from California. Watergate is already
Underway.
It's more than underway. It's in full flower. What was that like for a 33-year-old guy?
Well, I was comfortable with it in terms of my ability to cover the story because in California, immodestly, I had a big political reputation as a political reporter, and I knew a lot of the principals. I knew Bob Haldeman before he became Bob Haldeman.
That's one of the surprises of the book.
Yeah, and I knew Ron Ziegler before that as well. I'd been around Nixon and his people because he were in and out of California a lot. And I also had been going in and out of Washington over the years and built up a kind of a constituency of friends there that were Bob Novak, for example, and Johnny Apple and others. So I had kind of a reputation as a pretty good political reporter. The hard part of leaving California, we had just built a house on the beach, and it took every dime that we had and then some loans on Venice Beach, and we were in it for about 6 months. And for me to go home and say to Meredith, we're leaving, we're going to Washington, didn't go over very well.
I can imagine.
And then to my surprise, when I arrived at the White House press corps, I got the kind of down-the-nose treatment by a lot of the old guys who I didn't know them. I didn't have any.
Well, you're the new kid on the block.
I'm the new kid. I'm from California. You know, what does this guy know? And I had been doing local news in California as well. So how did this happen? Enough of my friends kind of stepped up and said, "Wait a minute, he's pretty good at this." And so I got underway, worked my fanny off, and of course, what helped me is that there was so much going on that you had to be a dope not to get it. And I could just stand out the window of the White House and catch whatever was coming out of there and be competitive. And then I broke a couple of big stories, and I was okay within a month. But it was chaotic, to try to get the family settled in Washington. First thing that happens is, Spiro Agnew's resigning. So I'm down there covering that.
Yeah.
And then all hell is breaking loose. And the next thing that people forget about is that Israel was invaded by Egypt and by Syria.
Yeah, you have the Yom Kippur War.
The Yom Kippur War, and that was a huge deal. I had a little relationship with Kissinger because he liked to come to California, and I'd been at dinners with him and other things, so that kind of helped. But it was just 24/7. But we look back on it with great affection because after a month or so, people were really kind to us. They reached out in our neighborhood and other places.
Well, I want to talk about some of the kindness from the old staff,
Yeah.
the vets in the White House press corps. But I do have to let you tell the folks the great line you had for Al Haig about when he asked you how's it going in that job of yours. Despite your confidence, you did say,
I said it's like learning to ski in an avalanche, which is really what it was. I was just all day long, and you're very competitive. Dan Rather is the CBS correspondent. He had a big head of steam at that point. So I broke a couple of stories, and that helped. And that was one of the times that I broke a story about the fact that they were dealing with Elliot Richardson. Maybe he was changing his mind about resigning. We weren't on the air all day long. I would go on, get briefed at 10 o'clock in the morning, go on Huntley Brinkley that night, or in those days, John Chancellor and David. And then the next morning on the Today Show. I wasn't there all day long, speculating, being asked.
We forget, well, perhaps we don't forget, but people today are used to the 24-hour news cycle and the CNNs and Foxes of the world around.
Right.
It wasn't like that then. There was no internet then. There was...
Yeah, and then I made a couple of pals in the White House press corps. There was a great guy from the Wall Street Journal by the name of Fred
Zimmerman.
And he was a really smart dude and a newspaper guy. And after I'd been there a month or so and put on some complicated stories in a way, he came to me and he said, you do know what you're doing. And I said, thank you.
I love the section of the book where you talk about how you and he would kind of mull over what seemed to be the Nixon strategy,
Right.
and you'd be saying to him, Fred, this doesn't make sense. And Fred would say...
Until you remember, he's guilty.
Yeah.
But we didn't say that on the air.
No, of course not.
We didn't say that.
Did you believe at the time that he was guilty?
I did. The evidence was piling up. And when we knew about the tapes, and we saw how could the whole team be guilty and be going to jail, and the president not know about it because he was in touch with them on such a regular basis. And John Dean said he was in 35 meetings with the president in which these issues were discussed. But Nixon, being Nixon, said it was executive privilege. I have a right to withhold that information, and kept at it. And he kept, as well, his kind of Nixonian dignity. You know, he'd won. We have to remember that second term was one of the great landslides in American political history. George McGovern won one state. He got us through the war in the Middle East. He was dealing with Russia. He'd been to China. And that was all in his head about who he was. But then at the other end of the Nixon spectrum, he was in there saying, I could raise $1 million. It'll take whatever it takes. And he would talk about those idiots from Harvard who were trying to unseat him. Very complex guy.
I got to go back and name check Bob Haldeman again, because you said you knew him from California. He had offered you a job at one time. What job was that, Tom?
Well, you know what it was. About a year into the Nixon administration, the first term, it was clear that Ron Ziegler wasn't up to the job. Ron was an enthusiastic, spirited guy.
Press secretary.
Press secretary. We're the same age. But the idea that you could take a Los Angeles advertising man and throw him into dealing with that White House press corps, these old, grizzled veterans who'd seen everything on a daily basis. And he was mostly an enthusiast for the president. He didn't know how to balance things. So without telling Ron, what happened is that Bob Haldeman went to the president and said, we got to make a change. We think Tom Brokaw, and Nixon knew me well. And he said, I agree. So they came, and I almost threw up when the guy took me to lunch and said, we'd like you to be the press secretary. And I said, you can't tell anybody. And I went to the office, and I said to my boss, can't tell anybody. They've made this offer. You got to get me out of this. He called New York. Wonderful guy running NBC at the time was Julian Goodman. He former president of the news division. And he went down to Washington and took Haldeman aside and said, look, we have big plans for Tom. And he's flattered, and we're flattered. But no, it's not going to happen. Much later, Haldeman goes to jail. Nixon is out of office. I'm up here. I go out to Hofstra to do a...
Yeah, this is what? You're now, you've left Washington. You're in New York as a Today Show host.
Yeah, it's like 1976, 73. And I'm out there to do retrospective on Watergate. And I get this bear hug from behind me. And I turn around and it's Haldeman. He said, you know how many times I've watched you and thought, I could have sent that young man to jail, and laughed. So there was that other side of it.
That's the oddest, maybe the oddest anecdote in the book, at least to me.
Yeah.
This is a guy who has just finished serving 18 months in a federal prison for conspiracy and whatever else he was convicted of, obstruction of justice.
You're right.
And he comes up to you on a stage and he's hugging you and talking about, I could have, if you had taken my offer, you might be in jail.
Right. Well, I think that also speaks, however, to his candor, if you will. He knew what he'd been through. There was no way that he could disguise it at that point, and he came from a wonderful family. I just did a book tour with this book in San Francisco, and his wife showed up, and she was always an important part of his life. They came from a very establishment Los Angeles family, and she came up and said, Tom, I love the book. It was hard for me in some parts of it, but Bob and I always thought the world of you.
There are obviously many parallels between today and those years, and there are many differences between Trump and Nixon. And you don't belabor the parallels or the differences, but one of the things is that the relations between the White House and the press corps were not nearly as testy as they are now.
Well, they're pretty testy. I was working with a lot of veteran Washington reporters, almost all newspaper men. Dan and Tom Jarrell from ABC and I were the three principal television guys. And there were some radio guys, but mostly the White House press corps was dominated by newspaper guys. And so when we were there, we all kind of helped each other along the way. You'd share information with them. But there wasn't this kind of chest beating, drum beating kind of thing that went on. They'd been through a lot of different stuff. So, at the end of the day, I learned a lot from them. I think that they came to appreciate not just who I was, but the role of broadcast news and those kinds of stories. We were being taken very seriously by the country and working very hard at it.
Tell our audience about the lunch you had with Ziegler. He calls you to lunch one day and has something of a reprimand for you.
Well, it was pretty late in Watergate, and Ron and I had known each other in California because he had worked for Bob Haldeman. And I don't think he was an evil man. He just believed too much in his own skill set, which was not as great as he thought it was. And he believed very much in Nixon. So in the spring of that year that Nixon had to resign, before he resigned, I got a call from Ron. He said, let's go to lunch. So we go to lunch at San Souci. It was a very popular place in town. Sits down, he said, you're a huge disappointment to us. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, we thought you'd come with a fresh perspective, but you've just bought into the whole Washington lie. By now, by the way, we've been through the Saturday Night Massacre. We knew what the tapes said. We knew a lot of stuff that was going on. I said, Ron, that's not me. That's you. That's what you guys are doing. I'm reporting that. It was kind of a testy little exchange. All of a sudden, the maitre d' drops a note.
Well, he said, we thought you'd have a fresh perspective, and said you fell in with the Georgetown crowd.
Yeah, the Georgetown crowd. That was always a big division.
So now the maitre d' drops a
note on the table, and before I can get to it, Ron picks it up and hands it to me and said, I rest my case. And it says, hey, kid, I guess this means you're not coming to Hick Hill for dinner tonight. Ethel Kennedy was sitting across the room. Hick Hill was shorthand for Hickory Hill. I had not been invited to dinner, but she saw a great opportunity to raise a little hell with what was going on. And to his credit, Ron laughed, and then we walked back together and didn't have another exchange about it.
You talk about how much news was happening. How do you keep your focus at a time like that?
Well, part of it was that I had time to reflect during the day. I wasn't finishing a news conference and instantly going on the air with Andrea Mitchell in the middle of the day on MSNBC, or with Chris Matthews that night. What we would do is make some phone calls, find out some additional information, get it in perspective, and then at 6:30, 8 hours after we'd been briefed, go on Huntley Brinkley, or in those days, I still call it Huntley Brinkley, but it was John Chancellor and David, and do a report. And then when that was over, I'd get on the phone, work it some more for stuff for the Today Show the next morning. I wasn't going back on.
It doesn't sound like you're very fond of the 24-hour all news all the time cycles that we have today.
I was actually kind of one of the inventors of it, frankly. I really worked hard at making the deal, first of all, with Microsoft, of getting them to be our partners and stuff, and I could see where it was going. I think the problem with it is,
people may not know, MSNBC.
Microsoft.
Right.
Yeah, anyhow. And I did believe that it was coming, that we had to get there first. My issue with it is, and I've talked about this around the office, I'm not telling tales out of court, is that it should constantly advance the story, and there should be fresh information. I watch a lot of it, and it gets recycled all day long. I mean, at 9 o'clock at night, I'm hearing the same thing I heard at 10 o'clock in the morning. I want new information, and I want occasionally some self-deprecation. I think we got this right, but we're not sure. We need to hear from other points of view. Reaching out into the country is an important part of it. This sounds like I'm being very critical of my own organization, but it's true of all of them. I think that they become a kind of New York-Washington axis. So you see many of the same people, and a lot of people will have these fancy titles. I have no idea who they are.
Let's talk about one of your scoops. As the fires are building around Nixon, he's making a speech, sort of almost like a campaign kind of thing, but you had learned, I think, that there was a fix-in, that the people would, he and his team had Republican supporters around the country on call to call in to the White House and say how much they supported the president. And apparently enough of it was known that the president even vowed, okay, we're not going to do this anymore.
They promised.
Pick it up from there.
They promised they wouldn't do it. And it was not just people, but institutions were to call. Bankers, for example, manufacturers. We are really with the president. And when that was found out earlier, they said, we're going to end that practice. Now I'm at a fairly early stage of my days at the White House. And I knew Pat Buchanan well from my earlier days. And he was going to take the head off of George Meany, the head of the AFL-CIO, for backing the president's opponents. So I was called.
Pat at this point is what, speechwriter?
Speechwriter, but he really had a communication very close to the president. It wasn't his idea. There was a guy named Ken Clausen who was kind of a thug, frankly, and he thought I was a California pretty boy. I didn't know what I was doing. So he said, I'm going to give you a break. You can interview Pat Buchanan about this. So I said, okay, I'll come over. I'll do that. So I go over to do the interview, and it worked out fine. I said, I need a phone. And so Clausen said, well, there's a phone in there. I go, and there's a memo on the desk, and it says, I've made all these arrangements. We're going to hear from Bank of America, from the National Bankers Association, from the Chamber of Commerce. They're going to call and tell the president what a wonderful job he did tonight. They were completely breaking their promise. I think, I'm being set up. They want me to go on, and it's not going to be true. So I memorized the memo, and I go on and say, thanks a lot. Go back to the office. Think, how can I do this? I remember I called, I think it was the National Association of Manufacturers. I got the PR guy, and I said, hey, it's Brokaw at the White House. You guys all set for tonight? Didn't tell him why I was calling, and I was not well known at that point. He said, yeah, we'll be making the call at one. I said, thank you very much, hung up.
Confirmation.
And then I went on the air and said, despite their promise, they've made these arrangements. Well, Ken Clausen went nuts, obviously. And he was embarrassed because people then knew where it had come from, and they didn't do it again.
That confirmation came up, that need for confirmation came up in a second scoop of yours much later after, I don't know, days before Nixon actually resigned. I mean, in that same week, I think. And some Republican senators, or one in particular, calls you and says...
I had been courting him, and he was number 2 senator on the Republican side. And he'd been very cautious with me, but he'd been courteous. And then he called and said, Mr. Brokaw, you've been very patient with me. You need to know that we have a delegation going to the White House to tell the president that, in fact, it's come to an end. So I immediately called Nightly News, and the uptight editor says, you need a second source. I said, my God, this is the number 2 guy on the Republican side. And he said, you need a second source. So I hung up the phone. I knew Goldwater was part of the delegation. And I know. And Barry Goldwater Jr. was somebody I'd known from California. He was in Congress, and I called him up and I said, hey, Barry, it's Tom Brokaw. And I'm like, yeah. I said, boy, all this stuff going on, your dad. He said, yeah, they're going to the White House. And I, thank you very much, hung up the phone. And then I had my second source.
Tom, one of the differences between then and now, the idea that you guys were on top of a story, but you had, at that point at least, you had a country behind you, not behind the press, but behind the idea that Nixon had to go. And I don't know that we've reached that at this point.
Well, we haven't by any means. And part of it, it's complicated. For one thing, I think the most influential and in many ways dangerous development in America, in the world for that matter, are social media. And I'm not talking just about the right, but I'm talking about the left. The idea that you can be sitting in your underwear in a basement in Chicago and you didn't get a date for the prom, so you're ticked off at the world, so you're going to get even with the world. And you can very cleverly go online and create a big false scenario of some kind. And it gets out there instantly. And people begin, if they read it, they believe it.
Take us inside the East Room on the day that Nixon is saying farewell to the staff. You're there and watching this. And it's an account that you have in the book that sounds to me like Nixon, inadvertently writing his own epitaph.
I wanted to be in the East Room. John Cochran has always said to me, "Thank you very much. I got to be on the air out on the Lafayette Square. I was getting more television experience than I'd had in 2 years because you chose to be to give up the camera and to be in the East Room." And it was a sense of melancholy, but also relief on the part of the staffers who were there because it was coming to an end finally, and they could see that it was going to end at some point. So there was a lot of kind of milling around. One of the things I really remember, as I write in the book, Tom Gerald, the ABC White House correspondent, had been away on vacation. He came back with the worst haircut I think I've ever seen in my life. On the biggest day of his assignment. It was just god-awful. And he was a really handsome guy, and he was not vain, but he had, good haircuts most of the time. This one was god-awful. And I said, "Tom," and just then Ron Ziegler walked up. Ron Ziegler, who'd been with the president, now he's going to elbow with him because he's going to be with the president. Ron turns around and says, "My God, Gerald, where did you get that? That haircut is the worst haircut I've ever seen." And I said, "Ron, your president is about to give his farewell. I don't care, that's the worst haircut I've ever seen." So there were the humanity moments there as well.
But Nixon, in those moments of farewell, says, "Others may hate you, but they don't win unless you hate them, and then you destroy yourself."
And that's what happened to him.
And that's the epitaph I'm referring to.
He had that deep, dark streak, and we'll never, ever completely figure him out. I know people who are very close to him, critical of him yet, and we've had these conversations. If you go back and read about his childhood, he had a very, very difficult childhood. He had a cold father. His mother was gone a lot because she was taking care of his brothers who were dying of, it was like rheumatoid arthritis kind of thing. And they weren't going to make it. She was over helping them in Arizona. And he had to witness that, and he got no attention from his mother as a result of that. Very bright, getting good grades at school, geeky as they come, He would drive Pat, on whom he had a crush, on her dates, so he could just be in the car. He would be the driver for it. He went out for the football team, and he was a klutz at it, but he wanted to be involved in stuff. But smart and ambitious. So there were all these complexities about him. But there was this dark streak that he never, ever conquered or managed very well. He had this resentment about people who were, he thought, elitist. They unleashed a war on Jews in his administration who were running a lot of the administrative fact-collecting organizations for how we were doing economically and otherwise. Get rid of them, he would say. Those Jews, what they're doing. So he was very complex.
And I don't think you even had an ability to decode him, 15, 16 years later, you interview him at his library in Yorba Linda. And how did you find him then?
Well, I thought that he had mellowed. I thought that I'd interviewed him before that a couple of times, and he acknowledged his mistakes. I was too hard on the press, but of course he would kind of smile and say, "But you guys were hard on me as well." So the touching moment for me was that at the library, my mother was with me. My mother was really bright. She had graduated from high school at 16. It was the middle of the Depression. She couldn't afford to go to college, but she was a real political junkie. And she was a Democrat. She was a dirt road Democrat. She was an FDR, acolyte, frankly, and always voted the Democratic ticket. But she did so because she thought it was in the best interest of her family and what they were. So I said to Mother, "Would you like to meet Nixon?" And she said, "I would." So I took her over there. And Nixon could not have been more cordial. And he said, "Mr. Brokaw, you're from South Dakota." And he said, "Pat." And she said, "Oh, I know about Pat. Her father worked in the gold mine in the Black Hills of South Dakota." He said, "Yes, that's right. How did you know?" She said, "I've followed her." And they had this wonderful conversation between the two of them. He looked her in the eye, which he almost never did. He almost always talked to you right here because he was so uncomfortable socially. And it was touching for me to see these two people who were bright, came out of the Depression, had seen so much in America, the Depression, the war, and then the changes that were going on, had at least a social connection about how they could talk to each other. And I walked away with her and I said, "So, are you changing your party registration? She said, no, of course not. But I enjoyed that, and I thought I was personally touched by that.
Before we go, let's jump ahead. I'll tell the audience we're taping this in early January, so the answer to this question could be old before it gets on the air, but will Donald Trump be reelected?
Impossible to know. I'm a great believer. I use the line too much. I stole it from a Time magazine reporter a long time ago. I believe in the UFO theory. The unforeseen will occur. We don't know what that is yet. He's in a position because of the economy, if it stays strong, and because of, I think it's fair to say, the chaos in the Democratic Party in the terms of who's going to be the nominee. He has a shot, a good shot at it. He has a very, very faithful following. I mean, the Senate, for example, which will be his jury, they're getting instructions from the White House, frankly, at this point. So I think that the country has to understand that we are as polarized as I've ever seen us in my lifetime, frankly. And a part of it has to do with social media. Some of it has to do with what's on television, Fox as opposed to MSNBC and all that other stuff. But it really requires everybody to take a deep breath and be a citizen and do what is in the best interest of the country.
Tom Brokaw, it's great to see you.
Always great to see you, Tony.
The book is The Fall of Richard Nixon, A Reporter Remembers Watergate. Delightful read, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.